You're listening to the Focused and Fearless podcast. I'm your host, Heather Angel, and I've been helping people tune into what lights them up and increase their personal and professional performance for over a decade. Now I'm best known as a high-performance coach helping entrepreneurs like you cut through the noise and create a business and life on your terms. If you're ready to step out of struggle and discover how simple it can be to create a fulfilling, joyful, and successful business without all the overwhelm and long hours, you're in the right place. Hey, gorgeous ones. Today's episode is another interview episode with the amazing Rosi Viljoen. She is the co-founder of Midlife Hub. Now, I know that many of my clients come to me in their 30s, 40s and 50s, and they have started their business because of something that's happened in their life. For some people, like it was for me, they've had kids and they've gone, I don't want to do this whole ridiculous 50-hour-a-week corporate career thing. There has got to be another way. And for some of you, it might be that the children have left the home and you're like, oh, I've actually got some time to think about me. For others, it might be a change in career. It might be redundancy. It might be, unfortunately, a loss of a loved one or an illness that's made you reevaluate life and go, I don't want to do what I'm doing right now, and I want to change, and I want to set up a business, and I'm going to create my own path, and I'm going to create my own future. This is what Rosi and I discussed. She is the co-founder, as I said, of Midlife Hub, and oh my goodness, the conversation we have is really, really important for men and women who are starting to think, is this all there is? Have I got to the point where there's no more to look at? Is there anything else to learn? What have I got to look forward to? Because I think that happens for a lot of us. For many of us, for many of you listening, we're entrepreneurs. And we talk about in the episode that I feel blessed to be in this entrepreneurial bubble, because the idea of having life coaches and asking for help and driving for more and following your heart's desire is just, that's everyday stuff for us. That's how we've chosen to live our lives. But actually for a lot of society, that's quite alien. And we go into, if I hadn't found entrepreneurship, I would have probably just fallen into midlife thinking, oh, well, okay, this is it. Life's kind of on a downward spiral now. I've done all the things that society told me I needed to do. Got the education, got a boyfriend, got married, had kids, got a house, bought a bigger house, all those things that you're supposed to do. What next? And this is the conversation I have with Rosi today. So sit back, tune in and enjoy. Rosi, welcome to the Focused and Fearless podcast. I am so pleased to have you here.
Oh, well, it's great to be here. Looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So for everyone that hasn't come across you yet, could you tell us a little bit about who you help and how you help them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the co-founder of a social enterprise that we launched this year, 2020, and it's called the Midlife Hub. And we help people in their midlife really kind of get a grip and get a handle. Our whole idea is we want people to live a really full and powerful midlife.
I love that so much. And, obviously we're going to link everything up in the show notes, but your website just screams positivity. All the messages just so like, this is okay. Midlife isn't a bad thing. So I'm thrilled to have you on the show. And what I would love to dive into first is how Midlife Hub even came to be a thing. What led you onto the path to creating this?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, I co-founded this social enterprise with Deb Pasley. We started at the beginning of this year. And it really came from a conversation that Deb and I were having over a coffee that kind of turned into a beer in a very long conversation, as these do. And we were talking about kind of our own midlife experiences, our own midlife meltdowns, if you like. We were talking about the fact that kind of midlife sneaks up on you. No one tells you that it's coming, and it can be a time of great kind of transition and change. That might be in your physical health, in your mental health, maybe in your career or your work, your family dynamics, perhaps your children are growing up or your parents are aging. And so lots of these changes start happening. And obviously if you're a lady, you've got hormonal changes, you've got perimenopause, menopause coming in as well. And no one really tells you it's coming. And we were talking about the fact, wouldn't it be great if we could help people have a better experience than we had? Because the reality is there are loads and loads of really incredible businesses out there across the whole spectrum of midlife who could really support and help. But it's really hard to find them. You either have to ask friends for recommendations, you have to Google, and then how do you know that the businesses or the services that you're looking at are trustworthy? We felt there was a real gap in the market for someone to bring everything together, everything midlife together, and give it some credibility.
Yeah.
So we've hand selected businesses, services across the spectrum of kind of physical health, mental health, well-being, fitness, career coaches, life coaches, and they've all passed a 6-point check. So we've looked at their qualifications, we've looked at their financial background. We make sure what they do really has kind of a positive outcome and that they come highly recommended. So effectively we're taking the hard work out of it, because
absolutely.
You lose your sometimes you can lose the will to live when you're looking for these things. And if you're already feeling in a place where you're feeling a bit down, you're feeling quite delicate, maybe loss of identity, perhaps you don't have the time, the energy, the wherewithal to actually do this research yourself. So that's what we want to do, is take the hassle out of it.
That's amazing. And I think what I love is, there's so many aspects of that I want to dive into from an entrepreneurship point of view. The thing I love the most is you're like, well, we sat down and had a coffee and we had this idea. And I'm like, oh my God, every great business, that's where it starts. It's like, we had this discussion and it was like, And I love the fact you're like, coffee turned into a beer, and then boom, this amazing idea blossomed into this incredible social enterprise that you've created. And I suppose what I would love to touch on as well is for my listeners, I have male and female listeners, is this isn't a menopause midlife service. This is about, you mentioned life coaches, all these other aspects. So this is something that men and women go through, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, midlife has a real negative connotation, I think, in society. We did some market research a couple of weeks ago, and we asked people, what word do you associate with midlife? And we got old, we got grumpy, we got crisis, we got menopause. And I think people see the term midlife as a negative and they're scared about it. And they don't really think of it necessarily as a specific life stage. And, we plan for lots of different life stages. You might plan to go to university, you plan for your career, and then suddenly you're kind of thrown into life and the busyness of life takes over. And then suddenly, whatever age that might be, kind of anywhere in your 30s upwards, you start thinking, well, kind of, is this all there is? Is this it? What do I want to do for my next 20 years?
Yeah.
We're all about kind of lifelong learning. It's not about a static linear journey. And so really for us, it's helping people think, well, what do I want to do? Are my goals and my needs and my wants the same as they were when I was 20? Yeah. Do I want to actually think about maybe taking a gap year? Do I want to go back to school? Do I want to retrain? Actually, do I want to get a grip on my mental health or even my physical health? And so it's always kind of about learning and growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is so poignant because, of course, many of my listeners have their own businesses or are starting up their own businesses. And what I see a lot of is people come to me after a life event. They're like, oh, so I've had kids, or, oh, my kids have left home, or, oh, I had an accident and it's changed the way I view life and blah, blah. And now I'm just re-evaluating everything. And, obviously when they're talking to me, they're like, I want to start a business. That's the route they're deciding to go down. But what I think is so interesting is that out of the entrepreneurial space, I'm not seeing many conversations happening about this transition. And like you're saying, the lifelong learning, I think society puts us in this bubble of like you said, university, you plan your life, you go to school, you go to university, you buy a house, you get married, you have kids, you buy a bigger house. Then what? Then what happens? And you said when you spoke to people, you said midlife, and the first word that came to my mind was like crisis. You know, your bloke's running off and getting their sports cars, marriage is breaking down, you know, all these things. And it's such a shame that that's the view that we have of midlife.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's about kind of self-awareness throughout all of the kind of the different life stages that you move through. But I think particularly in the midlife, there is this sense of kind of change and transition. And when I think about my own experience, I'd been working for a big global corporate for 20 years. I'd been in a role that I loved. I'd had my kids. But as my kids were getting older and not needing me as much in the sense that, you know, I had to kind of be with them at every single second of the day, it freed up time for me. And that's where I then started thinking, oh, okay, what do I want out of life? Kind of where is that 20-year-old who was kind of full of passion and full of vim and vigor? You know, have I lost her? Is that still me? What do I actually want to be doing for me? And I think a lot of people during midlife have those internal conversations, you know, whether that's when you kind of hit your 30s or whether it's when you hit your 50s. So it's really about kind of continually asking yourself, I guess, those questions and making sure you're doing something positive towards it.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with all of that. And, you know, it's important what you said for people to hear that, you know, it might happen in your 30s, it might happen in your 50s. I think, again, midlife, especially as a woman, you know, you think, oh, midlife, that's when I hit the menopause. That's midlife, and it's all downhill from there, and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, thankfully, knowing people like yourself and knowing amazing people and being in this entrepreneurial bubble, which I feel very blessed to be in, everyone's talking about, you know, amazing things, and you see men and women of all ages absolutely crushing life. Like, they're just loving it, doing the things they love to do. So that's almost the norm in the world of entrepreneurship, because that's the way we have decided to live our lives. How, you know, I would be really curious to know, I know it started in 2020, you know, this social enterprise, but do you see a shift to people starting their businesses around this time of life? Are you seeing a shift to sort of them thinking, when they're having this awareness moment, kind of going, oh, there's a business idea here?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually it's very interesting. I think there are a lot of maybe females in particular who do hit this phase, and perhaps they're in perimenopause or they're menopausal, and it is almost that light bulb moment where they are taking the bull by the horns and saying, actually, now, because I've got all this experience behind me, and also perhaps I don't care as much about what people think about me, and I don't need to be everyone else's vision of a good mother, a good sister, a good colleague. I can do stuff for me. And so I think from that, it really sparks people's innovation and entrepreneurship. And they do strike out and kind of pick up and run businesses and start businesses through their own passion.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting. I had a conversation with one of my Focus and Fearless members the other day about, you know, she was saying, oh, you know, I'm not this, you know, gorgeous 20-year-old that can be on Instagram all the time. And I was like, girl, would you even be in business if you were when you were 20? I wouldn't be. You know, the people we are in our, you know, early 20s is completely different once we've had those life experiences. And I certainly see a lot of women, because we, you know, we want to raise people up with us. We want to help, and we want to share the gifts that we've got, and we've realized we've got, and share that experience. And it's a very loving energy that sort of seems to be coming out when you have this realization of like, oh, hang on a minute, I can help people. That is, I think, pretty much actually 100% of the clients that come to me, like, I really want to help people because I went through this and blah, 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 blah. And now I've retrained and I want to help more people. And it's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
I think that's something that Deb and I discussed is, I wish someone had told me when I was hitting 40 that this was all coming down the line. And why don't we talk about it in society? You know, it's really interesting. They've just announced now that menopause will actually be on the school curriculum, so that it's being taught to both girls and boys, you know, in their teenage years, so they know it's coming. I never got taught about it. You know, my mother's generation certainly didn't talk about it or talk to me about it. And it was very much just crack on with it. We don't, you know, it's something that we go through and we just do it and we don't talk about it. So I think for us, it's about helping people who are kind of down, you know, further down the path from us to make them aware that, you know, this is a life stage that you'll go through. Potentially, these are some of the changes that you might expect. And maybe you want to get ahead of that. You know, if you do want to go back to school and retrain, that might take 2 or 3 years of financial planning to get you in that position. So it's really about kind of awareness for us. And I love what you were saying about the amplifying of the other businesses. And we've got our members who are the businesses and services who provide midlife support, and they can be anything from yoga teachers to menopause coaches, to life coaches, to masseurs. And our whole piece is that we all amplify each other. So it's a really strong network of supportive businesses, because when you are a small business, you have to be everything to everyone. So you have to be your own PR, you have to be your own bookkeeper, you have to be your own social media. And so I think to be part of that network where, you know, you've got other supportive people around you is really important too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was sort of laughing when you were saying that. I was like, God, yeah, I remember when you first start your own business, you are everything. I mean, the moment when you hire your first assistant or, you know, outsource to a bookkeeper, you're like, oh my goodness, I feel amazing, you know, because those moments when you're like, oh, phew, I can outsource things. But I actually think that the word that came to my mind when you were describing, you know, how businesses do run, especially when they do start up, the word resilience really came to mind. And I do think when you go through certain life experiences and you get to a certain age, like, you know, whether it's 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you have that resilience in you. And you said at the beginning, you just don't care as much about what other people think. You know, I think that is so necessary when you have a business. You have to have pretty thick skin and be able to go out there and go, this is me, this is what I'm doing. If you don't like it, you know, that's okay.
Yeah. And it's why Deb and I have this mantra, and it's good enough is good enough. So we're not striving for perfectionism, because that way, you know, you're running down rabbit holes trying to be everything to everyone. We do a really good job. We try as hard as we can. And then we say, is that good enough? It's good enough. Let's move on. And that allows you speed. And that's something that is so different. We both came from a corporate background, huge organizations where there were teams of people working on very narrow components of the business. Obviously for us, we're having to do everything, but with that allows you to move very quickly, to try things, to fail really quickly, you know, test ideas, and then be able to kind of move on. And so for us, it's not about perfectionism. It's about getting it out there and seeing what works and really kind of move as rapidly.
Yeah. Amen to that. I think the internet had a little bit of a wobble, but, you know, absolutely amen to just, you know, failing quickly, putting it out there, seeing what happens, because that is how you run a successful business. Is you can't hide and shrink back. And, you know, that goes into life. You know, we can't live a full life if we're just going to sit on our hands and be in fear of, oh, it's not good enough. You know, I need to make it perfect, because perfect is completely unattainable. So I love that. I love that. That's a great message to share. So I would love you to share with my audience, because a lot of them will be they're sort of dipping their toe into entrepreneurship. They're sort of dipping their toe into a new way of living. And you have something called, forgive me if I get the name wrong, but a midlife map, which sounds amazing.
Yeah. So this is a service that's available to anyone. It's a free service. And it really, our idea is to help people think through what's important to them and how to prioritize that. Because, as I said, I think earlier, it can be quite overwhelming when you want to make a change. And it's a bit like the New Year's resolution thing, right? You say, I'm going to drink 6 pints of water, and I'm going to run a marathon, I'm going to learn a new language, I'm going to you know, 10th of January, the trainers are still in the box. You haven't done anything because you've kind of thought too big. So for us, we're real advocates of baby steps. Let's just think about 2 or 3 items that are really important to you. And then we have our concierge service that will help signpost you to specific practitioners, services, events that we feel would be really of benefit to you for your specific needs of where you are.
Yeah. And I think that is something so worth doing, because I do think, we talked about different, I think before we jumped on the call actually, about people come to this midlife realization or awareness at different times. And certainly for me, it was after having children. So it was, early 30s. And I wish I'd known about something like this, because I had no idea. I had postnatal depression, although I didn't realize it at the time. Tried the traditional, go for a counseling session, went for one, felt dreadful. And then it was only because I had a business that I knew about coaches and life coaches and all that. So I did find my route, and I did find my path, and I did find my help. But something like this, to be able to, like, hey, like almost like a virtual hug to, it's okay. Like, it's all right to have this whole, like, holy cow, where's my life going? What do I do? Absolutely. Which path, no one's told me where I go after this point. I've just been told to go to school, educate myself, do a bit of traveling, get a house, get a husband, have children. Now what? Now what do I do? So this sounds amazing.
It's okay to ask for help, right? I think a lot of people feel like they have to work it out on their own.
Yeah.
And it's fine to ask for help. I mean, every athlete you look at in the world who are top performers, every politician, they've all got coaches, they've all got a support network around them. And so I think it's fine to ask for help. It's more than fine to ask for help, because you don't always get there on your own. And why wouldn't you have an external cheerleader helping you get where you want to go?
Absolutely. And I think that's really important, because now, again, I feel very blessed. We're in this sort of entrepreneurship bubble where it is normalized to have a coach and to be talking to people and asking for help and reaching out. But it takes a while for a lot of people to realize that that is perfectly acceptable, and that is the way you grow. No one is magically self-made. They didn't do it all by themselves. And I think hopefully those you guys listening to this, if you've got people who are not in this entrepreneurship bubble, who are kind of in that society programming, if you like, where they're like, nope, I just need to struggle on and figure it out myself, please direct them to this episode, because there are too many people, and men especially, who are really struggling. And after the year we have had, holy moly, people need that sense, almost like a sense of control, a sense of getting back on track with things. And, men and women will really benefit, I think, from having this sort of conversation, or this sort of midlife map to kind of go, okay, what do I want to do? And really have that awareness of where do I want to go and how do I want to do it? And like I said, even if it's that tiny step of one thing, I'm not saying everyone listening to this, like, go out and set up a business and make your millions. Yeah. That might not be what floats their boat at all. It might just be, focusing on their health for now.
Yeah. Yeah. And often that then has a big snowball effect. If you find that one thing that is the key, it will snowball into other areas of your life. And I think what we've always wanted to do is to make sure that we were very human-centered. So there's no algorithms involved. We're not churning out pre-canned responses. We kind of really listen and think specifically about the individual and what their needs are. Because, if we might say, okay, well, maybe a life coach is for you, there are 1,000 different life coaches out there, but there are life coaches who have specific specialities. So whether that's kind of either in kind of, grief counseling perhaps, or setting up a business, or whatever that specific need that you have is, would be able to direct you to, to that relevant service.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Rosie, thank you. This has been such an absolute joy. All the resources that have been mentioned are going to be in the show notes. But like I said, for you listening, guys, if you are sort of really resonating with this, or you're thinking, oh, do you know what, maybe a loved one, a family member, husband, wife, maybe they could actually do with listening to this, and realize, because so often we see it in others before we see it in ourselves. So you might be thinking, God, my husband really needs to listen to this episode. But, do direct it to other people. Let them know that these resources and the help is available for people, and that midlife isn't a negative. It's a stage of life that we all have, and it's something to be embraced and excited about. So Rosie, thank you so much for bringing that message to the world.
You're really welcome. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Focused and Fearless podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation or have a question that you would like answered in an upcoming episode, head over to Instagram and connect with me at Heather Angel Coaching. If you enjoy this podcast, please share your thoughts in a review on iTunes. I truly value your feedback and I take the time to read every single review. Have a beautiful week and I'll see you in the next episode.